Hi, let's talk about mushrooms. Let's talk about climate change. Let's talk about poverty. Let's talk about malnutrition. Let's talk about how we can start changing all of this. The Mushroom Project in northern Tanzania was born out of the question, how can we have the largest butterfly effect? How can we, in our little corner of the world, do something small that will grow to make intergenerational and eventually international change? When we sat down to ask that question, one strong answer immediately became clear. If you want to make lasting change that will affect generations, you have to target women. The reason for this is because on a statistical level, countries with a high gender gap are countries that have high hunger indices. What this means is that countries in which women are measurably at a disadvantage, whether that's economic, whether it's from a familial standpoint, their position within the family, whether it's educational, whether it's all of the above, when these women are disadvantaged from a societal point of view, the hunger, the measurable levels of hunger within that country are much higher. On the flip side, if we want to start targeting some of these massive international inequalities like hunger, malnutrition, infant mortality, and maternal mortality, then you have to target the women. So what happens when international development projects specifically target women? On an almost immediate level, there's an increase in child education. There's an increase in the entire family's health. There's an increase in prenatal care, which leads to a decrease in infant mortality, maternal mortality, increase in birth weights of the babies. There's an increase in child development. In other words, the entire family unit slowly begins to pick itself up from a nutritional standpoint, from a health standpoint, from an educational standpoint. And then if you look forward generationally, the coming generation is already approaching adulthood from a higher education standpoint, better health, which means these women, these children are now much more likely to create their own families with better health, better education, better nutrition, etc. And the cycle slowly leads to a multi-generational climb out of poverty. So why mushrooms? Mushrooms are perfectly suited to cater to the exact needs of women, particularly women who are at a disadvantaged position internationally. They don't require land ownership, which is significant because across the world, many women aren't even legally allowed to own land. Second of all, they have a very high nutritional value. So as you're working with areas that suffer from malnutrition, increasing the production of mushrooms is an acute and immediate way to start counteracting that problem. They don't require any previous education, which of course many women internationally suffer from extreme inequalities in terms of their opportunities for education. They're not labor intensive, which is multifaceted in terms of how that's helpful for women. First of all, not all women are as physically capable. Women certainly oftentimes don't have the finances to be hiring outside labor. Women in various stage, pregnancy, post-birth, infants, taking care of other families, they have a lot of additional household activities that they need to do. Women are often in charge of fetching the water. They're in charge of a lot of household childcare, etc. So they don't have as much time in the day to be set aside for actual income generation. So a non-labor intensive income stream is tremendously helpful for women. Mushrooms are also year-round, which means especially as climate change becomes increasingly problematic, the mushrooms are kind of independent of rainfall. They grow indoors in their own enclosed environment, hot, cold. As long as you choose the mushrooms, the mushroom strain with careful consideration, then they're kind of immune to the various climate changes, to the various unexpected weather patterns, etc. Mushrooms also don't require pesticides or fertilizer. And this, first of all, is healthier for the communities that we're trying to service that can be suffering from significant health issues, malnutrition issues, already having all different types of pesticides in the water, chemicals, biological problems in the water. Plus, pesticides and fertilizer are expensive, and they're quite often allocated very unequally with preference towards the men. So not requiring them gives these disadvantaged women an opportunity to have an equal shot at making a significant and reliable income. From a climate and ecological perspective, mushrooms are an active way to fight climate change. First of all, they're grown on agricultural waste. Much more often than not, this waste would have been burned had we not intervened and taken it for the purpose of mushroom growth. So we're preventing the burning of significant amounts of agricultural waste on an international scale. Second of all, after the mushrooms are grown on this agricultural waste, the substrate itself on which we grew the mushrooms is now a perfect fertilizer. It's a perfect animal feed. So these women can either sell the substrate that they finished growing mushrooms on for the added income, or they can use it if they have their own other farms, animals, whatever it may be, they can use it to boost their other economic activities. So it's both cyclic agriculture, it's also a much more cyclic income revenue stream. From a financial perspective, it's a minimal initial investment. Breaking into the fields of mushroom growth requires almost minimal investment. And there's a lot of ways that we as an organization can step in and help them build up that investment and help them with different plannings, etc., so that they can break in with almost no investment at all. And the return on investment is within a couple of weeks. With the right harvest and sale, we're talking 2-3 months. And they're year round, so as you sell, you're already setting up, and it's a fabulous continuous revenue stream that's quite reliable for the women. On the long-term scale, as women master the initial mushrooms, they can start expanding into more exotic, higher-end, much more expensive mushrooms, so they have a long-term growth plan to be considered as well. And finally, and very significantly, the international demand for mushrooms is insatiable. So that as we, as an organization or a company, step in and help bridge the international market gap that these women could potentially face in selling their mushrooms, what we've done is we've opened up smallholder farm owners to the world market. And the potential is virtually endless for these women. So in short, what we have here is a cheap, fast, pretty easy, extremely healthy, non-labor intensive approach that within a couple of months, women can start boosting their revenue stream by hundreds of percentages, and slowly they and their family can climb their way out of poverty on an international scale.